class. This is Dr. Vivashwan, and today let us discuss about the essential aspects of the perineal spaces and the ischiorectal fossa. Let us discuss about it. So, perineal spaces and ischiorectal fossa. What is perineum, first of all? Perineum means actually a diamond shaped space or a rhomboid space present exactly in the caudal aspect of the pelvis. So, if we there is something called as a lithotomy position. Lithotomy position in a sense. It will be usually, this position will be adapted in surgeries for conducting normal vaginal deliveries, for conducting any the perineal surgeries. We will do a characteristic position. In this particular maneuver, the patient will be allowed to settle. In this, the patient will be lying supine over the bed, but there will be a flexion of the hip joint, and flexion as well as the complete abduction of the hip joint, and there will be semi-flexion of the knee joint, and the semi-flexed knee will be supported with the help of some kind of supporters. So this particular position, assuming this to be the crouch and this to be the patient, the crouch, the hip joint will be in the flexed position, the knee joint will be in semi-flexed position, the hip joint will not only be in a flexed position but also they will be abducted, so that the perineum area will be well exposed. So if we look into the perineal area, it's a diamond shaped area. So what are all the boundaries of this diamond shaped perineal area? First thing, anteriorly we have something called as symphysis pubis. Posteriorly we have the tip of the coccyx caudally, and anteriorly we have the sacrum, which much cranially, and on the either side we have something called as ischial tuberosities on the either sides, symphysis pubis on the anteriorly, posteriorly the sacrum, could be coccyx more caudally, and anteriorly the S1 vertebra as well as the ala of the sacrum. So this is the diamond shaped area, which will be better exposed in the so-called lithotomy position. Exactly, this particular diamond area, for our convenience, we can divide it into two triangles. So what are those two triangles? The rhomboid, the first thing anteriorly, this particular triangle is called as urogenital triangle, and the triangle present below is called as anal triangle. So anal triangle, we have an anal orifice here, so this is called as anal triangle. This is called as urogenital triangle because the urinary as well as the genital openings are present in this anogenital triangle. The anterior most, let us assume this thing to be a female perineum. We have in front of symphysis pubis, we have a fat-filled space. This particular fat-filled space went exactly in front of the pubis is called as mons pubis, and the skin above this mons pubis, it may contain the hair follicles having this pubic hair. If you come behind it, we have something, let us assume it to be a female pelvis. In case of female pelvis, the urinary and genital orifice are different in case of a female pelvis. In case of a male, the both urethral and genital will have a common external opening, and anal posterior triangle, anal orifice will be there as such. So here we have labia majora in case of females. This labia majora, this particular thing is actually developed from the genital swellings, which is quite it's a contemporary of this scrotum in case of males. And if you go behind, we have something called as labia minora. If we reveal this, we have labia minora. This labia minora is developed from the urethral folds, also called as genital folds. And here we have something called as the clitoris, which is quite homologous with the penis in case of the males. So just behind this clitoris, if you open the labia minora, we have something called as a vestibule. Vestibule. Vestibule is nothing but an empty space. Into this vestibule empty space, we have something called as a fold of mucous membrane. That particular thing is called as hymen. So anteriorly we have the urethral opening, the opening of the external urethral meatus, and posteriorly we have this vaginal opening. This vaginal opening is the genital opening. So this particular triangle, hence it contains the urinary as well as the genital opening. This particular triangle, the anterior half, the anterior triangle is called as urogenital triangle, while the posterior half, because it contains the anal canal, this particular triangle is called as the anal triangle. So as soon as if we place the cadaver in the lithotomy position, if you just if you just expose the perineal area, what we find is the skin immediately. And if you cut open the skin, we can we can trace something, a fascia which has a name, that is called as collis fascia. It is called as collis fascia. This collis fascia is the fascia lying immediately underneath the skin in case of the perineum. So if you even open out this collis fascia, we can see anteriorly. First let us discuss about the urogenital triangle, the anterior half. What we can see? Here we can see two triangular areas. The triangle is further divided into two triangles on either side. This, assuming this to be the right and this to be the left side, and we have something called as, here we have a muscle. Exactly, I will mention a very important thing here. Exactly in between this, the anal orifice as well as the the genital orifice, we have exactly in between them we have something called as a perineal body. A perineal body. So what function that this perineal body has? The perineal body is a musculo-aponeurotic structure to which many of the perineal muscles will be getting inserted into, and it forms a very important support for the pelvic viscera. If at all this perineal body has got damage, that may leads to prolapse. Perineal body damage will leads to prolapse of the pelvic viscera, and we'll discuss more about the prolapse in the applied anatomical aspect. But right now we will focus more on this particular urogenital triangle. This urogenital triangle, we have two the boundaries of this urogenital triangle. Boundaries of the urogenital triangle. So it's a triangle, so it has obviously three boundaries. One is actually this particular muscle which is formed, is on the medial side. This particular muscle is bulbospongiosus. Bulbospongiosus on the medial side, and this is ischial tuberosity. This particular thing is ischial tuberosity, and this particular thing is symphysis pubis. And here we have something, one more muscle called as ischiocavernosus. This particular muscle, the longitudinal muscle, medial one is called as bulbospongiosus, and the lateral muscle is called as ischiocavernosus. And the base, this particular thing, actually this is formed by something called as the urogenital diaphragm. This particular base is actually formed by the urogenital diaphragm, which is formed superficially by superficial transverse perineal muscle, which is formed deeply by the deep transverse perineal muscle. So this is the base formed by urogenital diaphragm, which is in turn formed by the superficial and deep transverse perineal muscle, and medially is formed by the bulbospongiosus, laterally by the ischiocavernosus muscle. So let us, as soon as we open this skin and collis fascia, the anterior half, the urogenital triangle, we have on either of the sides, we have this, the triangle, this perineal pouches. Superficial perineal pouch is exposed, and these are the boundaries of superficial perineal pouch, and there is something called as a very fine membrane. The membrane is actually a separating structure, separating superficial. There is something called as perineal membrane. This will be a membrane on either sides, that is called as perineal membrane, this perineal membrane separates the superficial perineal pouch superficially and deep perineal pouch deeply. So as soon as the superficial perineal pouch is exposed, if we disturb this perineal membrane, the immediate structure which is present, the space which is present behind this perineal membrane is the deep perineal space. So what I want to conclude is perineal membrane separates the superficial perineal space from the deep perineal space. And let us so that's all about the perineal spaces. And these perineal pouches, superficial perineal pouch, deep perineal pouch, it's an empty space. So anywhere empty space, infection, the pus gets accumulated, and that may result in a kind of perineal pus will be, it will be very painful condition. So here very important NEET MCQ which has been checked in examinations. The MCQ is all except are inserted to the perineal body, and different options will be given, like one is superficial transverse perineum, and one is root transverse perineum, and one more will be this bulbospongiosis, and one more option will be given ischiocavernosus. So all these muscles are attached to the perineal body except ischiocavernosus. This particular muscle which is forming the lateral boundary of this perineal space, superficial perineal space, this particular muscle is not actually inserted to the perineal body. So what else? So ischiocavernosus. So if it is not attached to the perineal body, whereas its origin, whereas its insertion means it's there in the name itself. It has its origin from the ischial tuberosity. It has its insertion into the cavernous. Cavernous means, if you take the transverse section of penis, we have three cavernous structures. One is the pair of corpora cavernosa, and one more thing is corpora spongiosa. So this corpora cavernosa gets attached, which is on either side, to the respective side. The ischiocavernosus muscle, which is not attached to the perineal body, will be getting inserted, and it is supplied by the branch of perineal, the perineal, pudendal nerve. It's supplied by the pudendal nerve, and its function is to drain all these venous sinuses. The cavernous tissues rich with filled with nothing but venous sinuses, and it is because of this venous sinuses the enlargement of clitoris or enlargement of penis during the sexual arousal takes place, and that particular enlargement occurs because of this rapid inflow of the blood into this cavernous tissue, which is facilitated by bulbospongiosis in case of females into clitoris, in case of males into the penis. So that is all about the bulbospongiosis. That's all about the ischiocavernosus. So that is the peculiarity of ischiocavernosus with not being attached to this perineal body. So if we go deep, okay, we have studied about the superficial perineal space. We ruptured even this perineal membrane, the triangular shaped membrane, and we have even entered into this deep perineal pouch as well. So what is that's all about the anterior urogenital triangle. Well, coming posteriorly, we have the anus. So posteriorly we have an anus. So this particular posterior triangle, is called as anal triangle because it has the anus. So we have, if you carefully look, anal triangle. What else? Here we have we are done with the perineal pouches, superficial and deep. This ischiorectal fossa. Actually, anus, if we move more cranially, that itself will become the rectum. So these two terms are often used quite synonymously. Ischiorectal fossa, much cranially. Ischioanal fossa, if we go deep. So this is nothing but the ischioanal fossa or the ischiorectal fossa. We all know that here we have a ischial tuberosity on either sides, and here we have a sacrum, and here we have pubic symphysis. This is anterolaterally, we have something called as ischiopubic rami, and posterolaterally we have something called as the something which has its origin from the sacrum inserted into the ischial tuberosity. What is that? It is sacrotuberous ligament. Sacrotuberous ligament. It is present posterolaterally, has its origin from the sacrum inserted into the ischial tuberosity. So this particular sacrotuberous ligament is present posterolaterally. Here it gives one more fascinating thing is this sacrotuberous ligaments will give origin to a muscle that is nothing but the gluteus maximus muscle. So let us discuss about the boundaries of this ischiorectal fossa or ischioanal fossa. So anteriorly, ischiorectal fossa or ischioanal fossa. Anteriorly, what we have is the urogenital diaphragm, which is formed by the transverse perineal muscles and the perineal membrane. So anteriorly, we have the perineal membrane and the superficial transverse perineal muscle, which forms the urogenital diaphragm. This is there anteriorly. So what is there? To the post? I mean behind. Here we have something. This particular something which has its origin from the ischial tuberosity. There is one more muscle here. This particular muscle which forms the lateral boundary of the ischiorectal fossa, that is nothing but obturator internus muscle. Obturator internus muscle, which is covered by a fascia called as obturator fascia. So what is there? The laterally means anteriorly we have this the perineal membrane and the urogenital diaphragm. Laterally we have this obturator internus muscle, and it is covered by a fascia called as obturator fascia. Here I would like to say something about this obturator fascia, which is covering the obturator internus muscle. It forms obturator internus muscle. It forms something, the fascia covering the obturator muscle. It forms something called as pudendal canal. Pudendal canal, which is formed by the obturator internus fascia. This particular thing encloses neurovascular bundle. So what are all the names? It contains of pudendal artery, it consists of pudendal vein, and it consists of pudendal nerve. These three neurovascular structures are the components of the pudendal canal, which is formed by the fascia covering the obturator internus muscle. It is also called as obturator fascia. And this is the here we have a vein, the pudendal vein, pudendal artery, and pudendal nerve. And here I would like to say something. This pudendal canal is quite synonymous with something. It's also called as the Alcock's canal. ALCOCK'. This pudendal canal is quite synonymous with something called as Alcock's canal. And here it is enclosing the obturator artery, the obturator vein, as well as the obturator nerve. So this forms the the lateral boundary. Anterior boundary is done. We're done with the anterior side. We're done with the lateral side. What about the medial side? Medial, it's a reverse triangle like that. Medially, we have something called as levator ani muscle. Anteriorly, laterally, it's finished. What is there medially? Medially, we have something called as the levator ani muscle. This levator ani muscle is present medially. This levator ani muscle helpful in the elevation of anus. This levator ani muscle, which is formed medially, which is a medial boundary of this the ischiorectal fossa, is helpful in the elevation of the anus. Not only that thing, this levator ani muscle is actually composed of two muscles. Pelvic diaphragm is actually composed of three muscles. There are iliococcygeus, pubococcygeus, and one more is ischiococcygeus, or it's simply called as coccygeus. The iliococcygeus and pubococcygeus, they are useful in the elevation of anus. So they are also the iliococcygeus and pubococcygeus muscle put together they are called as levator ani muscle. Well, pubococcygeus, it's also called as simply coccygeus, is not a component of levator ani muscle, but along with this levator ani forming two muscles, iliococcygeus and pubococcygeus, ischiococcygeus, these three things will form the pelvic diaphragm. If we go beyond this ischiorectal fossa deep, both an anterior triangle and posterior triangle, anterior superficial and deep perineal space, posterior ischiorectal fossa, ischioanal fossa. If you go much called ischiorectal fossa, if you even go much deeper, what we can see is the pelvic diaphragm, which is found by the iliococcygeus, pubococcygeus, and ischiococcygis are simply coccygeus muscle. If you open in that, even directly the pelvic viscera will be exposed outside. So that's all about the medial boundary, which is found by the levator ani muscle. So anterior is done, lateral is done, medial is done, anteriorly, laterally, and medially. What about the posterior boundaries? The posterior boundaries. Posteriorly, what we have? Here, posteriorly, I said that we have something called as the sacrotuberous ligament. Sacrotuberous ligament. So there is a muscle, major muscle present on the back, the gluteal region, the lower back. It's something called as gluteus muscle, gluteus maximus muscle. So some origin, the origin of this gluteus maximus muscle will be taking place from this sacrotuberous ligament. So to say the posterior boundaries of ischiorectal fossa are the sacrotuberous ligaments, and it has its gluteus maximus muscle origin from the sacrotuberous ligament. So anteriorly, laterally, medially, posteriorly. And we can say that the floor is formed by this pelvic diaphragm and even the pelvic diaphragm, and the roof is formed by the skin and the fascia. That particular fascia is called as collis fascia. Fascia, skin and collis fascia. So let us, this is all about the boundaries of the ischiorectal fossa. Let us once more we will just correlate the things or the boundaries of ischiorectal fossa. And this particular thing is urogenital, this particular thing is the anal triangle. Urogenital triangle contains superficial and deep perineal pouches or superficial and deep perineal spaces. The ischioanal fossa, we have a potential space called as ischiorectal space or ischiorectal fossa. This ischiorectal fossa, it has anteriorly, it is having the boundaries like the superficial and deep transverse perineal muscles, which is formed by the urogenital diaphragm, as well as something called as the perineal membrane, and posterior and laterally we have the obturator internus muscle and fascia covering the obturator internus muscle, and that is called as obturator fascia. Obturator fascia forms something called as pudendal canal, which is also called as Alcock's canal. The pudendal canal or Alcock's canal holds the neurovascular bundle, pudendal artery, pudendal vein, and pudendal nerve. And even that's all about the lateral boundary. And posteriorly we have the sacrotuberous ligament, posterolaterally or posteriorly, and also we have the origin of gluteus maximus muscle from the sacrotuberous ligament. Medially we have this the levator ani muscle, which is formed by the iliococcygeus and the pubococcygeus part of the pelvic diaphragm. So roof is formed by the skin superficial fascia called as collis fascia, and floor is formed by the pelvic diaphragm. So what else? What else can be discussed? So we said that we have a pudendal artery, we have a pudendal vein, and we have pudendal nerve. So these, what are all the contents? The contents of this ischiorectal fossa. The contents of ischiorectal fossa are the branches of this neurovascular bundle. Pudendal artery will give rise to a branch called as inferior pudendal artery. Pudendal vein will give rise to a tributary. The tributary called as pudendal vein will be draining. Inferior pudendal vein will be draining into the pudendal. Pudendal artery will give rise to inferior rectal artery, and a tributary called as inferior rectal vein drains into pudendal vein, and pudendal nerve will give rise to a branch called as inferior rectal nerve. So all these three will have the suffix as pudendal because they are located in the pudendal canal, and all these three branches have the suffix of, all these prefix of inferior rectal. Inferior rectal artery, inferior rectal vein, inferior rectal nerve emerging from the pudendal artery, pudendal vein, and pudendal nerve. Pudendal artery, pudendal vein, pudendal nerve are the contents of this pudendal canal, while the branches arising from these structures like obturator, the inferior rectal artery, vein, and inferior rectal nerve are the contents of this ischiorectal fossa. So contents of this ischiorectal fossa are the branches from this pudendal canal contents. They are inferior rectal artery, inferior rectal vein, and inferior rectal nerve. So maybe you shouldn't be confused. The contents of pudendal canal are these neurovascular bundles. These neurovascular bundles will use us to branches, These branches will be the contents of this ischiorectal fossa. So this is the thing which is quite tricky here. And one more important applied anatomical aspect is the inferior rectal nerve. Inferior rectal nerve, we have something called as external hemorrhoids. Applied aspect, we have something called as external hemorrhoids. External hemorrhoids. External hemorrhoids, they are something called as, they are very painful. Internal hemorrhoids are above the dentate line, maybe nerve supply is not that, pain stimulation may not be there. It's below the white line of Hilton or below this, the dentate line. So it is, it has external hemorrhoids are quite painful. So what is the nerve mediating the pain in case of external hemorrhoids? That nerve is nothing but inferior rectal nerve. It is actually a branch of this pudendal nerve. Pudendal nerve, content of pudendal canal will be giving rise to inferior rectal nerve, which is carrying the pain of the external hemorrhoids. Very, very important applied anatomical aspect. And that's all about the ischiorectal fossa also. And the contents and applied anatomical aspects. Here, one more applied anatomical aspect I would like to emphasize is, this perineal body and prolapse. I said perineal body is a musculoepineuritic structure. Many of these perineal muscles will be getting inserted into this perineal body, except one which is present at these, the lateral aspect of this superficial perineal space, that is nothing but the ischiocavernosus. So this perineal body, in case of normal vaginal delivery, here we have the clitoris, here the urethral orifice, here the genital orifice or the vaginal orifice, here is the perineal body, and here is the anal orifice. This particular triangle anteriorly is the urogenital triangle, and here we have something, here we have a medially of the superficial perineal space is formed by the ischio, the bulbospongiosus. Laterally it is formed by the ischiocavernosus, and base is formed by the urogenital diaphragm, which is formed by the superficial and the deep transverse perineal muscles. So here, this is the genital orifice or the vaginal orifice. Usually this is nothing but the birth canal. During the process of labor, the baby will be delivered. The head of the baby will be delivered through this genital orifice called as the vaginal orifice. So what happens? While abdominal muscles are exerting pressure, they will be pushed anteriorly, and this particular muscle at this opening called as genital opening, that is called as vaginal opening, and it is pushed anteriorly. There we have something called as the head. As the head it comes out, to relieve the tension or to increase the diameter of this birth canal, to make the process simple, you have to give something called as an episiotomy. Tomy means to open up. Episiotomy means opening of birth canal. That particular thing is called as episiotomy. Episiotomy. So, if at all the episiotomy is not given, there will be so much pressure on the head of this fetus, so that it just comes out, damaging the vagina, and if it is severe, it damages the perineal body, and even sometimes it may breach the mucosa of this rectum also. So that's a very severe thing. So it depends on there is something called as perineal tears. The perineal tear, the grading of perineal tears will be there based on whether only this vaginal mucosa is involved, both vaginal mucosa and even the perineal body and even the perineal body, vagina, perineal body and even the rectal mucosa are involved. The perineal tears will be graded, and based on those gradings, the more severe the gradings, the more difficult the suturing process will be for the obstetrician. So that particular thing which we have to study regarding the applied anatomical aspect. So that's all. And here one more applied anatomical aspect I would like to reflect on is the labia majora. It can divide it into upper 1/3, middle 1/3 and lower 1/3. At the junction of middle and lower 1/3, we have something here or here. That particular, there is a structure which is called as Bartholin's gland. It's called as Bartholin's gland. What is a Bartholin's gland? It's also called as greater vestibular gland, or simply we can say greater vestibular gland of Bartholin. this particular gland presented the middle one third and posterior one third. If at all this presented the superficial perineal pouch, the gland, the duct of the gland and its opening all are there in the superficial perineal pouch. So if at all, you know, this gland duct has been blocked, it results in the cystic swelling of this gland. This particular thing is called as Bartholin's cyst. One more applied anatomical aspect is Bartholin's cyst. It is common at the junction of middle one third and the posterior one third. And just beside this urethra, beneath the clitoris, beside the urethra, we have something called as, you know, the paraurethral glands. They are also called as Skene's glands. And here this is Bartholin's glands. So this is all about the applied anatomical aspect. So if you see the coronal section, everything is done. We are done with the anatomical as well as the applied anatomical aspect. So let us see the coronal section to get more practical view. If you see the coronal section, assuming this to be the uterus, and we have a vagina, and we have this coronal section. So we have this even anteriorly, the anterior abdominal wall. Here posteriorly we have this the rectum and the anal canal. It's just an arbitrary diagram. So here I would like to say that this particular thing here, this particular thing is actually the perineal diaphragm. It's not pelvic diaphragm. Pelvic diaphragm is different. It is formed by the iliococcygeus, pivococcygeus and coccygeus muscle, or levator animal and coccygeus muscle. This perineal diaphragm. This is formed by the superficial and deep transverse perineum. This is there. Like, and even we have something laterally. This is ischial tuberosity. So we have a obturator internus muscle. On either of the sides we have a obturator internal muscles laterally. And medially we have this. It will be like this more appropriately. It's not like this. To be more appropriate, the triangle here that I am drawing, this particular thing. This is the levator ani muscle, and laterally we have this the obturator muscle and the fascia coming the obturator internus. This is the levator ani muscle. So it will be like this. And this is the superficial, this is the perineal diaphragm. The perineal diaphragm is formed by the superficial and deep transverse perineal muscle. So this is the triangle. So just beneath this perineal diaphragm, we have a superficial perineal space. Just above we have the deep perineal space. This is at the level anteriorly. If you move posteriorly, we have rectum or anal canal. At that particular level, it will be called as anteriorly, this posteriorly, rectum and anal canal. At that particular level, it will be called as ischiorectal space or ischioanal space. So this is the superficial perineal space, and this is the deep perineal space. Just now we have said that this is we have said that Bartholin's glands. They are contents of this superficial perineal space. The Bartholin's, even we have this, the root of the penis. In case of males, if you assume males, even we have this root of penis at this superficial perineal space. When we have this muscles, the muscle exactly at the center, that is nothing but the bulbospongiosus. That is both there in males and females. That particular thing is a content of the superficial perineal space. The root of the penis, in case of males, is a content of the superficial perineal space. So, and even on either sides, we have something called as, either sides we have a muscle which is not inserted into the pelvic diaphragm. That is the ischiocavernosus. Ischiocavernosus. This ischiocavernosus, which is present on, it's bilaterally, that particular muscle is also the content of the superficial perineal space. So this is all about the essentials of this anatomical aspects of this perineal area, especially related to the perineal pouches and the ischiorectal or the ischioanal fossa. So these things has to be studied in collaboration with the rectum and anal canal for better understanding. I'll make a video in future collaborating the gross anatomical aspects of rectum, anal canal, and even the ischiorectal fossa and the perineal fossa. All will be clubbed so that the understanding will become more and more easy and appropriate. Thank you very much.